Welcome students in our today's online English class. Today I am going to teach you the sixth chapter of your Behave book. The name of the chapter is My Childhood. So students, this lesson is an extract from Abdul Kalam's autobiography Wings of Fire. In his autobiography Wings of Fire, he speaks of his childhood. So in this chapter, we are going to study about his childhood, how he spent his childhood. So let's start reading the chapter. I was born into a middle class Tamil family in the island town of Rameshwaram in the erstwhile Madras state. My father Jainalabuddin had neither much formal education nor much wealth. Despite these disadvantages, he possessed great innate wisdom and a true generosity of spirit. He had an ideal helpmate in my mother, Ashiyamma. I do not recall the exact number of people she fed every day, but I am quite certain that far more outsiders ate with us than all the members of our own family put together. So, in his autobiography, when he describes about his childhood, he says that I was born in a middle class Muslim Tamil family in 1931 in the island town of Rameshwaram in former Madras state. Okay, erstwhile means former. Innate means inborn qualities. His father's name was Jainalabuddin and he was not a rich man and nor did he had higher education. But he had inborn quality of kindness. His mother was an ideal wife for his father, whose name was Ashiyamma. She used to feed many people every day along with her family members. Means a lot of outsider used to eat every day with their family members. Means she is also a kind lady. Let's move to next stanza. I was one of many children, a short boy with rather undistinguished looks. Born to tall and handsome parents, he lived in our ancestral house, which was built in the middle of the 19th century. It was a fairly large Pakka house made of limestone and brick on the Mosque Street in Rameshwaram. My austere father used to avoid all the inessential comforts and luxuries. However, all necessities were provided for in terms of food, medicine, or clothes. In fact, I would say mine was a very secure childhood, both materially and emotionally. So, austere means here simple, strict, and severe. So, here in the stanza, he describes about his parents and his house. He says his parents were handsome and tall, but he was a short and an ordinary boy of his parents. He further says that he lived in his ancestral house which was situated on the Mosque Street in Rameshwaram. The house was big and it was made in the middle of 19th century with bricks and limestone. He further describes about his father. His father was a simple, strict and severe person. He dislikes all the inessential comforts of life. He dislikes luxuries of life, but he provided all the necessary things to his children like food, medicine, clothes. So he further describes that his childhood was secure emotionally and materially. Let's move to third stanza. The Second World War broke out in 1939 when I was 8 years old. For a reason I have never been able to understand, a sudden demand for tamarind seed erupted in the market. I used to collect the seeds and sell them to a provision shop on Mosque Street. A day collection would fetch me a princely sum of 1 anna. My brother in law Jalaluddin would tell me stories about the war, which I would later attempt to trace in the headlines in Deen Money. Our area, being isolated, was completely unaffected by the war. But soon India was forced to join the Allied forces, and something like a state of emergency was declared. The first casualty came in form of the suspension of the train halt at Rameswaram station. The newspaper now had to be bundled and thrown out from the moving train on the Rameswaram road between Rameswaram and Dhanushkodi. That forced my cousin Samsuddin, who distributed newspaper in Rameshwaram, to look for a helping hand to catch the bundles, and if naturally I filled the slot. Samsuddin helped me earn my first week's. Half a century later, I can still feel the surge of pride in earning my own money for this time, or first time. Here Abdul Kalam says, when Second World War broke out means started in 1939, he was an 8 years boy. Suddenly demand of tamarind seed rose sharply in the market. He still didn't know the reason of it. Okay, here erupted means rose sharply. He used to collect seeds every day, and he used to sold all the seeds in provision shop on Mosque Street. And the collection of a day was a princely sum for him. It is 1 anna. His brother-in-law Jalaluddin used to tell him stories about war, which he used to find out in headlines in Dinmani. Dinmani is a Tamil newspaper. The area where Abdul Kalam was living, it was completely isolated. That's why it is unaware, unaffected by the result of war. But when India forced to join the Allied forces are the armies of USA and uh, Russia during the World War. Here, Allied forces means Mitra Rashtra. Okay, so when India was forced to join the Allied forces, when he gave his support to Russia and USA, an emergency of state was declared. The first problem came before them is the train that used to stop at Rameshwaram station, it moved without waiting. The newspaper had to be bundled and thrown out from the moving train on the Rameshwaram road between Rameshwaram and Dhanushkodi. His cousin, who used to sold newspaper, he need a helping hand now. So Dr. Abdul Kalam helped him in distribution of newspaper, and thus he earned his first weeks, and Samsuddin helped him to earn it. He further says, after a half century means after 50 years passed, and he still feels pride in earning his money in first time. Let's move to next ninja. Every child is born with some inherited characteristics into a specific socio-economic and emotional environment and trained in certain ways by figures of authority. I inherited honesty and self-discipline from my father. From my mother, I inherited faith in goodness and deep kindness, and so did my three brothers and sister. I had three close friends in my childhood: Ramananda Shastri, Arvindan, and Shiv Prakashan. All these boys were from Orthodox Hindu Brahmin families. As children, none of us ever felt any difference amongst ourselves because of our religious differences and upbringing. In fact, Ramadas Shastri was the son of Pakshi Lakshman Shastri, the high priest of the Rameshwaram temple. Later, he took over the priesthood of Rameshwaram temple from his father. Here in this stanza, Abdul Kalam describes about his family and his friends. He says every child is born with some inherited qualities in a spatial environment. He inherited honesty and self discipline from his father and kindness from his mother, like, like his three brothers and one sister. He further says he had three friends in his childhood. First one, Ramananda Shastri, second, Arvindan, and third, Shiv Prakashan. And three of the boys were belong to Brahmin families. Yeah, orthodox means conservative. And he says they never discriminate each other due to the social differences or the caste differences. On the basis of caste differences, they never discriminate each other. Even they live with a great bond and harmony together. In fact, Ramanand Shastri, his first friend, he was the son of Pakshi Lakshman Shastri. He was the high priest of Rameshwaram temple. And after the death of his father, Ramananda Shastri took over the priesthood of Rameshwaram temple. Arvind then went into the business of arranging transport for visiting pilgrims, and Shiv Prakashan became a catering contractor for the Southern Railways. His second friend, Arvindan, he started the business of arranging transport for visiting pilgrims. And his third friend, Shiv Prakashan, became a catering contractor for the Southern Railways. Now, next stanza. During the annual Sri Sitaram Kalyanam ceremony, our family used to arrange boats with a special platform for carrying idols of the Lord from the temple to the marriage site, situated in the middle of the pond called Ram Tirth, which was near our house. Events from the Ramayana and from the life of Prophet were the bedtime stories my mother and grandmother would tell the children in our family. He describes a ceremony which took place in Rameshwaram. It is Sitaram Kalyanam. In this ceremony, Abdul Kalam's family used to carry idols of Lord Ram from the temple to the marriage site, and the marriage site was situated near Abdul Kalam's house. There was a pond. In the middle of the pond, uh, they made a marriage site. So the task of carrying Lord's idols was given to the family of Dr. Abdul Kalam's. He says his mother and his grandmother used to tell the stories of Ramayana and the life of Muslim prophet at bedtime to the children of his family. One day, when I was in 5th standard at the Rameshwaram Elementary School, a new teacher came to our class. I used to wear a cap which marked me as Muslim, and I always sat in the front row next to Ramananda Shastri, who wore the sacred thread. The new teacher couldn't stomach a Hindu priest's son sitting with a Muslim boy. In accordance with our social ranking, as the new teacher saw it, I was asked to go and sit on the backbench. I felt very sad, and so did Ramananda Shastri. He looked utterly downcast. as I shifted to my seat in the last row. The image of him weeping when I shifted to the last row left a lasting impression on me. So here could not stomach means couldn't tolerate. Downcast means very sad and depressed. So he describes one of the incident of his classroom. He says, when I was in fifth standard, a new teacher came to my class. At the time, I used to wear a cap which marked him as Muslim. Okay. Abdul Kalam used to sit in front row just next to Ramadas Shastri, who wore sacred thread. Sacred thread means a thread. Sacred thread means a thread which Hindu boy used to wear on their chest. The new teacher couldn't stomach this. A Hindu priest was sitting with a Muslim boy. So the teacher ordered Abdul Kalam to sit in the last row. When he was asked to go on the last bench, he felt very sad. And same feeling was in the heart of his friend Ramananda Shastri. He became also sad. And the image of weeping lasted a long impression in his heart. Means his friend was crying and he couldn't tolerate it. Next Inja, after school, we went home and told our respective parents about the incident. Lakshman Shastri summoned the teacher and in our presence told the teacher that he should not spread the poison of social inequality and communal intolerance in the minds of innocent children. He bluntly asked the teacher to either apologize or quit the school and the island. Not only did the teacher regret his behavior, but the strong sense of conviction Lakshman Shastri conveyed ultimately reformed this young teacher. So after school, when they went home, Lakshman Shastri, they both of the children told about the incident to their parents. So Lakshman Shastri called the teacher in the presence of children. He scolded the teacher not to spread the poison of social inequality among their minds, innocent minds. He strictly asked the teacher either to apologize or quit the school and the island. After this, the teacher felt guilty, and this incident changed the behavior of teacher. On the whole, the small society of Rameshwaram was very rigid in terms of segregation of different social groups. However, my science teacher, Subramanya Iyer, though an orthodox Brahmin with a very conservative wife, was something of a rebel. He did his best to break social barriers so that people from varying background could mingle easily. He used to spend hours with me and would say, Kalam, I want you to develop so that you are on par with the highly educated people of the big cities. Okay. Here in this stanza, he describes one another incident. Here he describes about his science teacher Subramanya Iyer. He was impressed by his anti-caustic action. So he says the society of Rameshwaram, it was small, but it was rigid in terms of separation of different social groups. But his science teacher, he was, although an orthodox Brahmin, but he didn't have or conservative thoughts. But on the contrary, his wife was very conservative. His teacher, science teacher, did his best to break all the social barriers so that people from varying background could gather together easily. They can mix up together easily. He used to spend many hours with Abdul Kalam, and he says to him that, Kalam, I want you to develop so that you can become equal to the highly educated people of the big cities. Next, Anja, one day he invited me to his home for a meal. His wife was horrified at the idea of a Muslim boy being invited to dine in her ritually pure kitchen. He refused to serve me in her kitchen. Shiv Subramanya Iyer was not perturbed, nor did he get angry with his wife, but instead served me with his own hands and sat down beside me to eat his meal. His wife watched us from behind the kitchen door. I wondered whether she had observed any difference in the way I ate rice, drank water, or cleaned the floor after the meal. When I was leaving his house, Subramanya Iyer invited me to join him for dinner again the next weekend. Observing me hesitation, he told me not to get upset, saying, once you decide to change the system, such problems have to be confronted. When I visited his house the next week, Shiv Subramanya Iyer's wife took me inside her kitchen and served me food with her own hands. So here, one day, he was invited by his science teacher for a meal in his house. His wife was horrified at the idea of a Muslim boy is being invited to dine with her in her pure kitchen. Pure kitchen means uh, nobody from outside could enter his in her kitchen. She refused to serve him in her kitchen. Shiv Subramanya Iyer, who was the science teacher of Abdul Kalam, he was not disturbed and nor did he get angry with his wife. He served him and he had his own meal with Abdul Kalam. His wife was observing all the things from the kitchen door, behind the kitchen door. He wondered that if she had observed any difference in the way he ate rice, drank water, or cleaned the floor. When he was leaving the house, Shiv Subramanya Iyer again invited him for dinner next week. But at this time, he was hesitating. But his teacher said to him not to hesitate. If you want to change the rules of the society, if you want to change the system of the society, these problems will be minor to you. He convinced his wife to serve Abdul Kalam with her own hands next time he came, thus successfully changing the conservative attitude of his wife. When Abdul Kalam visited his house next time, Subramanya Iyer's wife took him inside her kitchen and served him food with her own hands. Thus, his science teacher break all the social barriers. He started first of all from his family. Then the Second World War was over and India's freedom was imminent. Indians will build their own India, declared Gandhiji. The whole country was filled with an unprecedented optimism. I asked my father for permission to leave Rameshwaram and study at the district headquarters in the Ramnathpuram. Now, in 1945, it's time when the World War II was over and Gandhiji declared that Indians will build their own India. The whole country was filled with joy and enthusiasm. At that time, For higher education, Abdul asked permission for his father to leave Rameshwaram and study at the district headquarters to Ramnathpuram. He told me as if thinking aloud, Abul, I know you have to go away to grow. Does the seagull not fly across the sun alone with alone and without a nest? He quoted Khalil Gibran to my hesitant mother. Your children are not your children. They are the sons and daughters of life's longing for itself. They come through you, but not from you. You may give them your love, but not your thoughts, for they have their own thoughts. So his father happily gave permission so that Abdul could develop his own career. His father convinced his hesitant mother, and he gave the example of Khalil Gibran to his mother. He quoted who had said that parents are a means for children to become independent from them. They don't belong to the parents themselves. So he convinced his mother to let him go for higher studies. So that's all for the day. Thank you.